Hello and welcome back to Red Shoe Lounge, and hello to you, Mara.
Hello, hello.
And obviously Louise here on the other side of the pond. And I am just a teeny weeny bit excited about the podcast that we're doing today. Very different from our last podcast where we talked to you about resilience and, you know, when you're in that darkness, what do you do to get out the other side? And maybe this will help. Who knows?
Maybe
Today, it could help. Today we want to talk to you about having sex in long-term relationships. And we did consider, didn't we, like talking about sex after 40?
Yes.
But that wasn't kind of like the route we wanted to go down, or sex in marriage. It was like sex in long-term relationships, because that's when it can start to go a little bit sour.
Yes. And a little bit, it gets a little stale and a little boring, maybe. Right?
So
You go ahead. I know you're going to go ahead.
no, so basically when we started kind of discussing what we wanted to put into this podcast, we talked about, like, are we actually getting enough? And me and Mara were like, nope. And I think it would be fair to say, and I hope my husband never listens to this, but normally it's not the right word. I would say it's a majority of the time it's probably the woman.
I'm going to agree. I'm going to 100% agree with that.
So if I get trolled, I don't mean it to be sexist, but, you know, at the end of the day, we're the ones that can withhold because we've got the vagina.
Right.
So, you know, and also if they piss you off, if they haven't done what you want them to do, and we're going to talk about fasting and burping, toenail clipping, athlete foot powder. It's all coming into today. You are in for an absolute treat today, let me tell you. So if you're at work or in public, you may want to laugh underneath your hand.
I also think it's funny that we say we feel like we don't get enough, because that's so subjective, because what is enough to one person is not enough to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So it's our own perception of what enough is. Because I could be getting it 10 times a week and you're like, oh, that's not enough. And I'm like,
yeah, that's never going to happen anyway.
I mean, 20 years ago, totally could have happened.
Yeah.
Not happen like that anymore.
But let's face it, we talked about the fact that children come along, okay? And, you know, you go through that whole thing, and first of all, you first got children. Oh my God, everything changes. You know, if your husband's seen you give birth, I mean, that's enough to put anybody off. I had to tell everybody that I trained to be a midwife for 6 months. And I remember seeing my first live birth and thinking I'd never seen anything so fucking ugly in my life. And no wonder my marriage didn't last, because he had to look at that. Anywho, you know, so we go through that thing, you know, our body's broken a little bit, we've got sleepless nights, our boobs leak, our vaginas aren't as, you know, perhaps they're not in as good a way as they used to be. You know, and one of the things I had, you know, the husband could still go out and you couldn't ever just have an argument and walk out and leave them, you know, because the kids were there. And then they get old and you're scared they might walk in, you know, and it's kind of like never ending. And then life gets in the way, and you've got finances and you've got jobs and you've got, you know, decorating, and all these things happen. And it kind of becomes more than the sex, doesn't it? It's like, it's the lack of sex is kind of lack of communication and intimacy that disappears over time. And so Mara and I started, I'm going to use the word riff because I love that word. We started to riff about what did we want to bring to the table to kind of put a different spin on this whole thing, and how could we start having more. And actually I've started reading a book last week I'm going to share, and I was reading about something in it this morning that I want to share with you. But the first thing that we had a good laugh about was, do we make it spontaneous or do we schedule it? So Mara, I want to hear your opinion on this one. Spontaneity or schedule?
So I'm all about the schedule.
I love it.
I want to know when it's happening. Let's get it done. I mean, so you get to a place, I think, where you no longer get like warmed up for the moment. Like, not. And also the kids are home, let's face it, right? Kids are in and out. It's harder to be spontaneous. It's harder to just be in that moment because they're in the next bedroom, or they're going to walk in at any minute, or, you know, whatever. So it's like, you know what, how about on Sunday we make sure this happens? And my husband is like, no, like spontaneous. I need spontaneity. I need a little, and I'm like, okay, just, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, something about, because I know, listen, I know how important it is to have in a marriage or a relationship. You don't even have to be married. It's a long-term relationship, whatever.
Yep.
And I know how important it is because, like you said, it's the intimacy and the closeness and all that. It's very, very important to stay connected. But at the same time, like at 9 o'clock at night, I'm freaking tired. Like, but if I know I'm up for something, I can stay up, you know?
I love that. Well, let me give you a tip that I took from this book that I was telling you about, right? Okay. So I'm not going to go into the whole reasons why she does it, but she talks about how sometimes it's beneficial for us to give ourselves rather than a reward system, because she said, let's face it, if the reward of a bigger bank account or a fitter body or a better relationship isn't enough to make you do the shit that you need to get done, right, then maybe you need to give yourself a punishment for not doing it. So she talks about you commit to something and then there is a consequence if you don't carry that said thing out. And it can be, she gives a myriad of ways that you can kind of like punish yourself. And I mean, she's not talking like belts and chains and whipping yourself, but just something that's,
well, it might be. Some people enjoy that.
It could be, as an example, you get to, like, if you watch shows on Netflix or whatever, like you skip a whole episode or a whole series and you're never allowed to watch it ever again, right? It's not just like not now, it's like never. Or it might be that you give up, you know, you're not allowed to have chocolate for a week, or that you have to put an extra 30 minutes on your workout, or you have to go talk to your mother-in-law for an hour. So something that's going to make you want to step up to the mark. Anyway, she talked about the fact that she schedules sex in with her husband, right? See? So right, and she said, oh, I know there's gonna be a load of you now saying, well, that kind of defeats the object and da-da-da. But like you said, sometimes you get into bed, you're exhausted, you know, you might have just finished work or whatever, and you're winding down, and the last thing you want to do is bust out of those gym jams and get yourself jiggy, right? You want to bust into the gym jams and get your hot chocolate out. So
right, unless I know it's coming, and I'm like, okay.
So she talks about, she has this thing whereby, I think she said she schedules to initiate sex twice a week, and I can't remember I haven't got the book here, but I can't remember what her consequence is if she doesn't do it. But she talked about a few other clients that have used this thing, and this one woman, like, so if the woman, and this is going to go back a little bit to having the conversations, and we're going to go into this in a little bit more depth in a second, but, you know, like not being like a bitter old hag with your other half, like learning to let stuff go, learning not to, you know, if they come in a bad mood in the, you know, from work, learning how to not let that drag on through the relationship. Do you see what I mean? Like, so she was having to learn to not be a nag, and
so in other words, not be annoyed by the farting.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So, but her consequence, right? So if she gave in and she nagged her husband, she had to give him a blowjob.
Oh.
So the husband's like, nag me. And she's like, no, I'm not doing it. But I think, you know, I think there is definitely that thing for spontaneity, because, you know, when you're first meeting each other and you haven't got kids, like, you might get taken up against the wall or chucked on the table or on the stairs or whatever, and there's kind of like, I'm pretty sure in all of us, that part that was like, just do that to me again, right? You know, whereas now in our heads we're probably thinking, if you come near me with that, I'm going to chop it off. Because it is not something, it's not scheduled, right?
And, you know, the fact of the matter is sometimes you don't even want it, right? As soon as you're doing it, you're like, why didn't I want this?
I know. Yeah, we kind of just forget, don't we? It's a little bit like macaroni cheese. If you haven't had it for a long time, And my husband actually made me macaroni cheese last night for my dinner, like a proper macaroni cheese, and it was awesome, really, really. And I spent my whole life avoiding macaroni cheese because of school, but anyway, that's beside the point. So we want to just kind of let you know that we don't give a crap if you are spontaneous or if you're scheduling it, but you could do both, right? You don't need to declare to your husband it's in the diary for Tuesday and Thursday night.
So I like that idea. It didn't dawn on me. I have no idea. I can schedule it. He just doesn't need to know.
Exactly. So you know that on a Tuesday afternoon, early evening, whatever, maybe you'll cook a little bit of something special for dinner. Maybe there'll be a glass of wine. Maybe you'll have your best lingerie on. Maybe you'll have painted your toenails and, you know, shaved your hard skin off your feet and, you know, shaved your legs, whatever. You know, you'll have made sure the kids aren't going to come home, and you'll do something. Maybe you'll have had a nice hot bath and slathered yourself in body lotion so that you're already feeling a bit warmed up for the occasion, right?
Amorous, yes.
Yeah, and I think as well, what's really helpful here is give yourself maybe like 20 minutes to think about what it was like when you first got together. And Mara's done this with me a lot. Well, not had sex with me a lot, but
well, considering that you're across the pond, it can't happen anyway.
We talk a lot about anchoring into positive, resourceful, emotional states. And so if you go back and go, what was it about the relationship that I really loved back then? What was it about them that really made me feel connected to them? What was I feeling like when I was in those really sexy moods where I really put the effort in? And just start bringing that back, right? And just give yourself 20 minutes or whatever to maybe, like, they're already in the house and you might just take yourself off and just have a think about it in the kitchen with a glass of wine, or in the bathroom or bedroom or whatever, and just anchor yourself back into that movement. But you can totally schedule it and they don't need to know.
Yeah,
and I think,
why didn't I think of that?
I don't know. And I think the thing is as well, is about being able to have those conversations with your husbands and maybe just planting the seeds, like, oh my God, I used to really love it when you, and do you remember how I used to react to that? And they go, oh yeah. So they might just start redoing that for you if you're really lucky. So that was one thing we had a discussion about. And then we talked about quality and quantity. And we both said we're quality over quantity. Yes. We like the quality. We're not going to say we're not fans of the quickies, because there is always a time and place for a quickie.
Always room for a quickie. Yeah.
Always room for a quickie, literally. But in the general scheme of things, I think, again, if we're talking about that intimacy and connection, it takes time to get that. You know, that we're going to need to be a bit schmoozed, aren't we?
Right. And I think, well, and maybe I'm being too general, but I think for the most part, women like to be warmed up and schmoozed and a little bit most of the time. I mean,
yeah.
And then there's going to always be an exception. Some women are like, yeah, no, not me. But that's cool too. But for the most part, it's for me, even, it's about being warmed up. Like, if he comes home all crabby, even if I've planned it.
Yeah. It is so true. And I had this conversation with my husband. So we went away for the night on Saturday, and I just said, just so you know, if we're having it tonight, you need to start now. This is like 9 a.m. in the morning. You need to start now, I said. And he's looked at me like I was speaking French. And I said, look, me and Mara are talking about this on Monday, like in a podcast. I said, so you need to listen up, son. And actually, as it was, we just found being away from our home environment. And because if I'm at home, I will find something to do. I will work, I will clean, I will decorate, I will garden, because I'm not awfully good at sitting around doing nothing. And then when I'm sitting around doing nothing, I'm normally moaning that I'm bored. So by the time we'd picked the car up, we stopped talking, had lunch in a pub and had a conversation, and we was like all giddy because we've got the new car. And then we drove from that pub to another pub where we were staying, which was like an hour and a half away. And it was right by the river, and it was a really, really frosty day. And we sat by the fire and we laughed and we did crosswords, and we just, you know, and we just totally reconnected. We went back to the room, we fell asleep, we had dinner, and it was like we'd just taken ourselves back out of our environment for a little bit and just put ourselves into what it's like when it's just he and I, and you're not thinking about anything else. You're just you two. And I have to say, sister, I was warm. That's all I'm saying. Actually, no, it's really hot. But anyway,
relate to that a little bit. Ron and I did some reconnecting of our own. Ron is my husband, for anybody who doesn't. He's not my boyfriend. No. When we had our trip to New York, it was very magical. 4 or 5 days for us. We reconnected. We've been married 20 years. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary.
Yay.
And, it's from time to time, I think you need that. You need to get out of your environment and get away from all the shit, this life.
Yeah. I mean, although I think I'm at the space now where I don't think we need anybody, like we don't need somebody to survive, but when you found a soulmate like that, and you think about what brought us together in the first place, like, and you think about all the things that you've been through together. I've been married and divorced, so I know what doesn't work. And then being in this relationship, like, what made this one different? Why do I still love him? How are we still together after? I mean, I've known him for 16 years, 17 years this year, and I still look forward to spending my weekends with him. He's still my best friend, but I want that. And I want the goods with the same level of excitement. So, it's a joint thing, right? So if you've got to make it scheduled, then you do that. If you want to bring quality to the table, you might have to go back and remember what you did when you first started dating. I bet most people do a lot less now than they did when they were dating and they wanted to impress.
Absolutely.
We could write a book on that. I'm sure we could write a very, very big top New York Times bestseller coming out of that one.
You know what happened the last time we had a bright idea?
This happened.
Red Shoe Lounge was.
So you want to wait to the Red Shoe Lounge action that's coming. I'm just saying. So we want you to think about like the quality and the quantity, and we want you to think about like what you need to do to bring that to the table instead of us we go to our guys. We want you to be more like this. We want like the what is it, officer or a gentleman type thing, and la la la. Well, you need to also be laying the groundwork for that to be a possibility as well. So that kind of leads us into the whole effort thing. So we talked about, didn't we, that we've kind of gone from that amazing excitement to relative boredom, or okay, if I, and it's not that you don't love them, but it does become a bit like, ugh. And like you say, it's so annoying because when you're doing it, you're like, oh my God, it's like, it's what, I don't get what makes us not want to do that more often. I think it's just.
Right. Every time.
Yeah. What is that? I don't understand. It's not like you're going to go running on a treadmill for 30 minutes and it's really, really hard work. I'm going to think about that a lot tonight. Right. So what we wanted to, we had 3 hashtags that came up here. We had hashtag warm me up, hashtag don't fart, and hashtag wash your feet. And that came from, so first of all, I shared my stories, and then I'll ask Mara, like, she can talk about the farting thing. But I came home from, I was doing some teaching for a couple of days, and I came home and Gary made me a cup of tea and we sat on the sofa, and I'm like, your feet smell. And he goes, you always say that, they don't. I was like, no, really, your feet smell. Like, I'm nearer to your feet. You're 6'2". I'm far closer to your feet and I can smell them. And he's like, they don't. So I actually had to sit on the other sofa because I couldn't stand it anymore. And my husband's also got a really bad habit of sitting on the end of the bed with his athlete's foot powder. And I go, don't you dare. And he looks at me and I'm like, if I wanted to marry my dad, I wouldn't have married you. Like, now all I can think of is my dad, and I'm going to get into bed with my dad, and then you're going to try and have sex with me, and that's all just wrong, and everything's just wrong about that whole conversation. So we talked about, and then we had a bit of a revelation. So just tell us about the farting thing for you.
Oh, yeah. So I just, you feel like, tonight's going to be the night, or wow, you look really hot, like, and you just kind of admire, like, after 20 years, I can still, just really think about you and just love you and just want to like soak you up, and I can't wait to get you to bed tonight, right? And then you've let out the biggest, grossest fart ever, and you're like, yep, I just fucking lost it all. Yeah. Sorry, it's kind of like having an erect penis that all of a sudden goes. It's like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. Our vagina just went bye-bye. Bye-bye now. It's all gone. It's closed for the night. Not going to come back.
I've just been clamped shut. Sorry.
Unless you put on a really good show or bring Channing Tatum in, there's nothing going on down there tonight. And I think, but what we found out was actually we then had a bit of a revelation, didn't we? Because we talked about how we. So I always used to get up and make Gary a cup of tea when we very, very first got together. He used to get up at 5:30. I'd get up and make him a cup of tea, like bleary-eyed. My kids were like 5 and 6 back then. And then after about 3 months, I was like, oh, that's just bollocks. I'm not doing that anymore. And I stopped doing it. But my new 5 a.m. ritual means that I'm up before him and I do my yoga and I do my journal. And then I bring us both a drink back to bed. And we, as I'm planning out my day, we're chatting. And it's really been a lovely way for us to reconnect. And we talked about how my dog gets the first kiss when he comes in from work. And you then went on to talk about how you had this ritual. You and Ron have got 2 beautiful rituals, one when you wake up and one when he comes in from work. Could you just share those with us?
So the first thing he says to me when we wake up, or we say to each other, he says, "Good morning, beautiful." And I say, "Good morning, handsome." That's the first 2 words out of both of our mouths every morning. And then he really, really loves it when I greet him at the back door when he comes in. It's rather June Cleaver-ish, for those of you that know Leave It to Beaver, from the 50s, right? That he really, really enjoys when he walks through the door, that I'm there to greet him. You know, I do work from home. I stay at home. I've stayed home with the kids for years. But that makes him feel like, I've just been waiting for you. I'm so happy that you're here. You know, he tells me all the time, when from the moment I leave this house, I can't wait to come back and see you again.
Oh, I actually just have to say that I do actually love Mara's husband. I have a crush on Mara's husband, but just so
I make every effort I can to make sure that I'm in the, so he walks through the kitchen, through the garage into the kitchen, that I'm in the kitchen to greet him when he comes home. The dog always lets me know that he's here. So there's never any doubt that that's the one that's coming home. He hears his truck coming all the way down the street and he's waiting at the door. And so the dog is not the only person to greet him when he comes in the door.
I love that. But what you went on to say there was, we both had that kind of realization that if we're talking about love language and how an action will land with somebody, as his fart lands in the closing of your legs, right?
Right.
Maybe we might get a different response if, when our husbands came home, we didn't look like we just got out of bed. Like like if you, not that you would, but if you were still in your pajamas, or you hadn't brushed your teeth, or you didn't have your makeup on, you're like, yeah, hello, have you had a good day? Right?
Oh, some days it's like that,
right? And he goes, woo, so glad to be home, right? Whereas if we go back a few years, maybe even before we had children, or when we first, like obviously Gary and I met later on in life, you know, and I actually used to wear skirts and shoes when he came home, instead of like,
I cannot even believe that.
I totally did. Actual legs were out and everything. And
talk about Leave It to Beaver moment.
No, I go, hello, darling. Did you have a good day, dear? Here's your hot pot. So you know, but it's that whole landing thing. Like, so we've got a language of love. Let's start being a bit more intentional with thinking before we actually speak. How can we show somebody that we love them without just be it by a simple action, you know, just doing something that's intentional. And maybe there is a little bit of 1950s housewife in us all that we can tap into for the sake of better sex. I'm not saying it has to happen, but I'm just saying, for the sake of more spontaneity, more getting thrown up against the wall or on the stairs, and a bit more excitement, like, I'm prepared to be a bit more 1950s housewife on an odd occasion to do that. And if my husband is prepared to not put his foot powder in, and, you know, Ron's prepared not to fart like a trooper, I think the least we can do is be a little bit 1950s housewife now and again. Agreed?
Agreed.
So what we want to finish off on is, we want you to remember that when we're talking about sex relationships and long-term relationships, we want you to do it for you. Like, not for them, not just, oh, I'm just doing this for you. Like, you're doing it for the pair of you. You're doing it for the fact that, first of all, sex burns shitloads of calories. It produces endorphins and dopamine. It makes you feel good. And the more you do it, the more sexy you're going to feel. It's going to reconnect you. Your whole life could change. And there's a lot of research about orgasms and making more money. So just park that one there. But do it for the pair of you rather than just doing it for him or just doing it for you. It's a much bigger story around that. So we want to know Red Shoe Action this week. Hashtag Red Shoe Action. Come tell us on YouTube channels. Come tell us on the podcast link, or come tell us on your Facebook pages or our Facebook pages. Just hashtag it Red Shoe Action. What are you going to start doing today to hot up your sex life?
Woohoo!
I know, right?
I can't wait to see those. And remember, your life is your choice. Choose wisely.